Home sellers, today we're going to talk about why, especially in multiple offer situations, the listing agent frequently wants to work or selects their own buyer over the buyers working with buyer's agents, even if the buyers working with buyer's agents are willing to pay a little bit more for the property. Many times, as a listing agent, I know what the seller's motivations are. They may be buying another property. They may be going on a trip around the world. They may have other circumstances. Some sellers are flexible as to time and don't even know if they really want to move out that quickly. But most sellers usually are making plans. And in my experience, many sellers are either downsizing or moving, but they're buying another house and they need some of the proceeds from the sale of their current property to put into the down payment on the next property. And if they don't, then they could lose the house or they could run into penalties. And that's something we're trying to avoid. So now, given that scenario, think about what happens when multiple offers come in. But rather than make this generic, I'm going to talk to you about a situation that happened to me personally. Phil Mills and I, we used to renovate properties. Phil does. In fact, he just got back from renovating properties for years in Arizona. And at the time, this was our third property we were renovating together, and we purchased a property in Fallbrook. Now, we probably paid a little bit too much for the property because we were hoping it was a horse property. It turned out it wasn't because there was a little too much slant. So some of our profit was already gone. And Phil spent about 3 months overseeing the crews as we were renovating the property. And luckily for us, Phil renovated it perfectly, knowing the trends. I mean, Phil's got a good eye. He's got the whole thing. He's very good at what he does. So now, because the property looks so good, we are having a multiple offer situation. Now, some of the buyers came to us directly, and we could have been working with those buyers. And I remember one of the buyers, I'm like, wow, this is a really good buyer. They know their numbers, and they're sticking here. I'd like to sell the property for a little bit more, and so would Phil. We would have been a little more profit. And so during the buyer negotiations, the back and forth that we do, we were able to bring up the buyers, and we finally got an offer from a grizzled veteran of the Fallbrook area. She knew her property. She told us how much she knew everything. Very smart, older lady, just like a grizzled veteran woman realtor. Probably had a crackly voice from smoking too much cigarettes. I'm sort of making that part up. I don't remember that part. But that's the picture I want you to see. And so competent and so sure in telling us about her buyer, and her buyer loves the property, and he's going to close, and he's got the financing. It's all lined out, no problem. So I think he was offering about $12,000 more than any of the buyers that we were working with, that we had seen the finances for, that we knew wanted a property and all likelihood of would have closed. But we went for the $12,000 more. So in the meantime, so some of it was my money, but we did borrow money from a hard money lender. So we were accruing interest every month. So we had anticipated 3 months. That's when the money goes back. The hard money lender got like a 2% fee and then 10% annualized. So every month we had a new number. That was a significant chunk of change, a significant percentage of our profits. So about a week to 10 days later, after doing the inspections, the buyer's agent comes back and says, well, we found a problem during inspections and we're going to have to lower our offer. And we're like, well, what's the problem? Phil almost took offense. He's like, I renovated this property perfectly. I know all the issues. They were fixed. They were repaired. Everything looks great. And she's like, well, the front windows on the property aren't double paned. And Phil's like, well, that's because we kept them that way for aesthetics. It's in line with the design of the architecture and everything else. Double paned windows breaks the view of the front, the facade, the way the home looks in the front. You'll notice everything else was double paned around the rest of the property, and we did that for air conditioning reasons and heating reasons. But we chose that look. You could see that as you walked in. She's like, we don't care. Well, she didn't say it that way, but she's like, well, no, we just didn't anticipate the expense. It's going to cost us thousands of dollars, so we're lowering our offer. And it was back basically to where their original offer was, which was actually lower than where some of our buyers were coming in, but only a little bit lower. It might have been a $20,000 delta or something, maybe even less. Maybe it was just the 15 and 3. And so now Phil and I were left with a problem, because that was really, we as I said, we sort of overpaid for the property. That was almost all of our profits. In fact, if we sold at the number she was giving us, we made $3,000 to $4,000 on the property, and Phil spent a lot of like a 40-hour week, he was probably putting in 30 hours a week on that property for 3 months. So you'd say, sure, well, why not just cancel with her and resell the property? Well, one thing is you don't really want to come back on the market after a property's been off the market for a while and no longer be pending because it comes back on the market. Everyone can see that. Now everyone's a little suspicious. Probably hurts your price sometimes unless you have a really good story and you explain this to people, or there's just lots of demand and you explain it to people. But we're concerned about coming back on the market. We're also concerned about the time of the year. We were moving into that winter, November, December season where it really slows down. And even January, February, you're not necessarily going to get great offers. So we were thinking, maybe we'd come back on the market in February and be ready to sell in March or April. So we're like, that's 3, 4, 5, 6 months of interest if we go off the market now. So they had us over a barrel. They knew it. And we wound up taking that offer. So I know the rest of my career, I'm always going to lean into working with the buyers that we know for every listing agent, for every seller. And I explain that story and every seller's like, wow. And, then they weigh it. And I've had some sellers say, I just want top dollar. I don't care if we wait another month. And others are like, well, I don't really care about $3,000 or $5,000. I want to move on with my life. Which buyer is going to close on time? So those are the questions. These are the things a listing agent conveys to the seller. And this is why buyers, working with buyer's agents, frequently don't get the in-demand homes. They frequently don't get the multiple offer homes. They frequently don't get the fixer-uppers because the real estate agents are in there working directly with a buyer. Okay, so almost every professional renovator, a lot of professional buyers will spot opportunities in the market and they'll come in and they'll choose to work with the listing agent and let the listing agent keep the buyer's agent commissions so they can have the edge in these negotiations and find out what other people are offering. So the professional buyers are coming in and doing this. I'll give more. I'll talk in the next video. I'll talk about how professional buyers actually do what I'm explaining. But that was this for this buyer. I just want to explain, holding all the things equal or even a little bit less, many times a seller and a listing agent are going to prefer the buyers they know, their financing, their lenders, their loans. They find out if they can close and their motivations over trusting a grizzled, smart buyer's agent. And in fact, I almost like working with beginning buyer's agents more, who will let me be a little bit in control of the situation. I'll explain to the situation and how I want to be able to work directly with their lender and get information from their lender. And their lender's not allowed to hold back from me because I know when the lenders are BSing. And if they're willing to say that, I might work with those lenders, those buyers, the weaker new buyers, over the strong grizzled veterans, all because of lessons I learned on that deal and others. So if you're a buyer, you've got to think about that. If the seller has an experienced listing agent, you might be in trouble if you got your own buyer's agent. So I have a whole series like this at winnerscheck.com. So if you go to buyers.winnerscheck.com, you can opt in for the video series and one of the forms I would use when hiring a buyer agent. Like in the previous videos, I talked to you about how those new buyer's agent agreements are not the law. You don't have to agree to pay a buyer's agent ahead of time. That's just that's a National Association of Realtors Trade Association rule, but it's not the law. So I have a better substitute form. You can download that, you'll get the training, and you'll see this whole video series at buyers.winnerscheck.com. This series is absolutely free. Talk to you later. John McConnin. I'm an attorney and a broker in California. I can refer buyers out to listing agents all over the country. And in other states, I would also then put an attorney on your team. That's just a little bit about our program. But go ahead, get that free video series. Thanks. Talk to you later. Bye.